Me too.
There's so many.
Wednesday, April 10th, and we're all mad when we have to be in this class. I don't know when they stopped selling tickets for the dance because kids have been asking me.
Thursdays.
So that's what I think is Thursday, but
That's what they said multiple times during lunch.
apparently multiple times during lunch it's Thursday, which by the way is tomorrow. Because they have to try and prepare to have stuff for the dance. So those of you who want the tickets, just giving you the heads up. Again, camp group info you will be getting tomorrow, and we'll probably actually spend the whole class period talking about camp since we have a really short class period.
Yes, King.
Since now we have both of our iLearn tests practice things tomorrow, so we're going to be on like a 2-hour delay schedule. I mean, you still have to be here at 9. We just get to do 2 hours of iLearn, and then we're going to go through and talk about camp as quickly as we can and stuff like that. Rager.
When do we get our sweatshirts and like shirts?
When they give them to me, I give them to you guys. So hopefully soon. But yeah, that's a good question. I'm hoping by tomorrow, but again, that is not a thing I get control over. Let's see, for you guys, book thing again, I would not recommend leaving your post-it note on the outside of book because then it's going to get torn off and disappearing and try to make your life easier. And then that's fine. Every day you don't bring book, it does cost you the 3 points of don't make me be mean to you. And then gospel page, blah, blah. There we go. So, here's why I got these things out. Do you guys know what this is?
That's on the floppy disk.
So, I know when you guys use like Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint, something like that, it's the little save icon. But I realized it's like a throwback to the times when these used to be how you would actually save things on a computer. So it was before we had things like, USB drives. By the way, this holds 1 megabit of information. So like when you take a picture with your phone camera, that is roughly 6 to 8. So any one picture you take with your phone camera would take about 8 of these to store that one. But this was the original little floppy disk thing. So that's why when you see that whenever you're saving on a thing, this is what it used to be, although we don't use these anymore. We've not used these since early 2000s, I think is when we stopped using these. Matthew, didn't mean to ignore you. What's up?
So it was about like the slide before. This is I have book minus 1 viewpoint.
If you what?
I said like on the bottom it says I have.
As in
Him.
me. If you lose your book and I have it because I found it somewhere, I still charge you a B point. I had to do that because I had kids who would deliberately leave it in my room as a storage thing. And so I had to start charging kids a point every time I had their book. And so if you don't have the book at all, it's 3. So yeah, I went and pulled out some of my old floppy disks, which is why that is up
Do you
there.
have stuff on them?
Can you what?
Do you have stuff on them?
I tried actually because I have like when I was in college and I would write papers and I was trying to see what was on them. And when I first started teaching, like before you had, what is it, the Microsoft thing that uploads to the cloud, like this is where I had to keep all of my teaching files, but you can't even like read them anymore. Like the files and the programs that use these don't exist. So when I went on there and tried to pull them off to like read my old stuff, my computer just laughed at me and it's like, no.
Like you do to us.
Yeah, like I do to you is what my computer did.
Tasting your own medicine.
And I'm assuming you guys know that's like the little pluggy thing that goes into it from there. So we did yoga pose, did that one, got to that one. Have not gotten to that one. Okay. That's where we left off. I'm gonna try and, you were right, we got to page 8.
It is not page 8.
It is not, it's on page 9. You're so
Yeah.
close. About halfway down that page 9 where it has, for a brief moment. For a brief moment, I pretended we were a couple, not snowbound outside Boston, but romping through the Caribbean surf, tan, in love. My fantasy shattered, however, when she waved goodbye and headed across the cafeteria to Todd Terrific, a new jock she was obsessed with. Can someone please explain to me how this preoccupation with dopey athletes happens even to headstrong young women who work in hardware stores and score 1350s on their SATs? Beth, what are you doing to me? Life was cruel and unfair. What did this Larry guy have to say about that? Oh, the rest of school went by like the movie Groundhog Day. Have you guys seen the movie Groundhog Day?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
If you've not, it's one you should watch. It's entertaining with Bill Murray.
Jim Carrey.
Well, Bill Murray wakes up and every day is the same, down to the last boring details. But when something new did happen, fire drill, substitute teacher, it was still just a giant yawn in the storyline. To keep myself amused during study hall, I invented a new alphabet based on the sense of smell. Footnote. I also wrote a skit for Monty Python, in case they ever wanted to reunite, then draw sketches for the Gumby art project I was working on. I gotta keep busy, I always say. Again, if you're not familiar with Monty Python, it's from like when I was a kid, but it is really odd humor. It's where a lot of my personality came from. I was like
Are
watching
those
as a
toes?
kid. Are those toes? Those dogs? Yeah, there's dogs.
they're
on
my
there.
toes.
And then Gumby is this guy. He's also the one that I have
He's
up
in
there.
it.
I have a Gumby. And then Pokey is this little pony friend, and I have one like over yonder. There's Pokey.
Also
Pokey's
up there.
right over here. I have one of those. I also have a Gumby that, oh, there's Gumby and Pokey on that one. Again,
also one
things that kids have brought in for me after we've read the book, but it's from Saturday Night Live, I think, from back in the day, or Saturday morning cartoons or something. At home that night, I booted up my laptop and logged on. I checked my email, then the small portfolio of stocks my mother left me when she died. I made one last online stop to Larry. I wondered if Beth was doing the same thing at the same time, an unrequited cyber date. The Larry logo filled the screen, a peace sign with a dove, a floppy disk, a planet, and a plug inside each of its 4 sections. I think that's the next picture I have up there. There you go. I scrolled down through several photographs to comments people had written that day. Poljon posted a new link to Adbusters. Toe Jam ranted about Larry's last sermon, calling it brilliantly flawed. I was in the middle of reading his argument when Peter knocked quickly, then stuck his head in my room. "You want some leftover pizza?" My stepfather was the ultimate businessman. Even in his terry cloth robe and slippers with the squashed heels, he could command his advertising consulting firm from the brink of failure to unbridled success. He had the whole sales thing down. The firm handshake, the warm smile, the good listening. It was the real Peter, not put on like lots of other guys at his company. He looked over my shoulder and checked out the screen. "Ugh, I've heard about this Larry," he said. "Some guy bashing our culture online. Such an anonymous coward. Some people think it's one of the big televangelists trying to reach the teen market. Or maybe a bored housewife in the suburbs looking for something to do." Peter shook his head. "Probably some hacker trying to make a name for himself." "Well, I'll add that to the list of hypotheses," I said. "You do that." He handed me a slice of pizza on a paper towel. "Dinner at Catherine's tomorrow? That okay with you?" "Sure. Great." Catherine was my stepfather's girlfriend, who'd been putting on the full court press to be the next Mrs. Swinson. I didn't have the nerve to tell Peter I found her as interesting as a bag of rice. Peter closed the door and headed downstairs to his office. I browsed the Larry archives, then printed out the latest sermon to prepare for Beth tomorrow. 2 things to pause there. So, his family is really weird, because you just talked about his stepdad and his stepdad's girlfriend, which probably sounds weird to most families. So, when Josh was younger, his dad left him. Turns out he was an alcoholic with issues and just dipped, went out for cigarettes and milk and never came back. So then it was just him and his mom. And then his mom started dating Peter, and they got married together. And then his mom dies of cancer, which we find out a little bit later, but those of us alive during the time knew about this. So now it was just him living with his stepdad because dad left and mom died, and then stepdads then started dating Catherine. And so that was this weird family dynamic thing where both of his actual parents are dead, he lives with stepdad. The other thing is, what we're getting ready to read where it says Sermon 93, this is why it became so popular. This was the first time that people sort of ranted online, and it was sort of aimed at kids where it was attacking stuff that kids wanted to attack. And that's what a lot of Larry did, was just post these things to its website, all about attacking things that they thought were dumb, like this first one. Sermon number 93. Slip on your Gap jeans, your Nike t-shirt, your Reeboks, or maybe even your Cons if you think that makes you cool and ironic in a Kurt Cobain kind of way. Grab your Adidas backpack, ride to school on your Razor, drink your Poland Spring, eat your Power Bar, write a paper on your iMac, slip on your Ralph Lauren windbreaker, buy the latest CD from Tower, check the caller ID to see who's on the phone, eat your Doritos, drink your Coke, stare at the TV till you're stupefied. Is there any time of the day when we're not being used and abused by the advertising companies? Can we have an inch of free space? Do you mind? Now, some ambitious kids rent their headspace, the outside, not the inside, although the inside space is certainly emptier, to local companies by shaving ads into their hair for all their friends to see. It's just a matter of time before corporations figure out a way to sell you stuff while you're sleeping. Maybe some kind of vitamin that releases visual and sonic enzymes that run like a ticker tape through your dreams. All the latest releases now at Blockbuster. Cheesier nachos at Chili's. By the way, you're snoring. Am I the only one who sees the irony of sitting in literature class reading 1984, having a discussion of Big Brother, watching out for us like it's sometime way in the future? Some science fiction nightmare that's never really going to happen? Hello? Our lives couldn't be more dictated by the corporations if they gave our schools AV equipment in exchange for making us watch commercials in class. Oh yeah, they do that already. Never mind. It's a good thing Peter had hung around for that one. By 2 a.m., I had 14 pages of notes for the new Larry Club. Footnote, I'd help Beth for as long as possible, providing I could leave the club as soon as it got weird. Too many people at the same time usually sends me heading for the hills. When I added up all the things I'd done for Beth over the years, I figured it was more effort than they put into developing the last space shuttle. And completely and totally worth it. One of my joys of this book now is seeing how dated it is with these late 90s, early 2000s references. Things like Blockbuster. Do you guys know what Blockbuster is?
Yeah, it's a
Way back in the day when you could go out and like rent things and stuff like that. Whereas like some things, do you guys know who Kurt Cobain is?
Yeah.
Nirvana.
Nirvana, the one that the shirt that a lot of people wear with the pink and it says the Nirvana on it. So Kurt Cobain was like the original I hate society kind of fighting thing.
Yeah.
Well,
There's actually a song about it.
There is. There's multiple. He sang a whole bunch of songs himself
He was
too.
kind of weird.
Yeah. And then when they're talking about the idea of advertising was the fact that there are places where you could get tattoos to advertise different things. And so that's what he was talking about, the idea of advertising popping up everywhere. Ooh, does anyone have Roku by any chance? If you do, Roku, I don't know if you saw, came out this weekend where their newest update is now going to be able to play ads over your TV even when you're not using Roku. And they can now pop up a little square in the bottom of it whenever you're watching TV, and they just got approved for it. So now they can run ads all the time on your TVs for you. And so it's the idea of little things like that. And I was like, ooh, how interesting that they were talking about how much advertising was annoying 25 years ago, and yet Roku is doing the same thing now. And then we used to have like TVs in classrooms, and they were all from this company called CNN, or not CNN, sorry, Channel 1 News. And what Channel 1 News would do is they would go around and put TVs in every classroom of the school, but you had to play their news program, and it had like commercials in it. And this was huge in the 90s for schools to get televisions in schools. You would make this deal with them, and then they would come in and give you stuff, but then you had to play their advertising. So this is what we used to have like in our classrooms here. It used to be right here. I had a giant TV that was in the center of my room until they pulled it out a couple years ago. We used to have them in the, we're not to that one yet. Have them in the cafeteria and stuff like that too. Page 15.
Now we
Oh
have
yeah.
a huge TV that doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I know, it just sits there. Joining anything was not my usual thing by a long shot. It's like that show Survivor. I read in the paper that 50 million people watched it last night. By the way, does anyone watch Survivor still? The fact that it came out when this was happening is crazy that that show is still going on. But yeah, Survivor hit big right about the same time as Larry. It's a reason not to watch something. I don't know about you, but if 50 million people all are doing something, I want to be doing something else, big time. My stepfather's girlfriend calls me quirky, But most of the kids in my school would probably just call me weird. I'm used to it, though. I've always been that way. I mean, when you're sitting in 3rd grade wearing a paper pyramid on your head to see if the rays of energy will help you concentrate, you're getting some kids looking at you like you're cuckoo. The good news was, I never cared. I never came home crying. I never worried. Oh, gosh, what will the other kids think? Just plain old oblivious. There's something to be said about ignorance being bliss. Footnote, well, not too much, of course, but something. When my mother was still alive, she used to threaten the principal for more services, extra tutors, more challenging work. He's 7 years old with an 8th grade math level. You're wasting his time making him add 2 plus 2. I'll homeschool him, I swear. Yeah, Mom, sure. Maybe after a handful of Prozac and a lobotomy. Do you guys know what lobotomy is?
No.
Lobotomy is when they would go in there and like take out parts of your brain. For people who are like schizophrenic or they thought were crazy, a lobotomy, they would take like a big needle and go yink, and then like wiggle it around and then pull it back out. So it's like brain surgery to make you special. Oh, do you guys know what Prozac is? Prozac is antidepressants, or anti-anxiety meds.
Drugs.
Medication. There's a slight difference. I don't think people are buying Prozac on the street.
Yeah, they are.
Or that could be interesting.
It's like a non-profit.
God rest her soul. She was a tireless advocate for me, but she could sit still about as much as I could. I can picture her homeschooling me now. The two of us spelling vocabulary words as we rolled down the hill behind the cemetery. She was a character. Loud voice, loud music, loud clothes. So much fun. Until the ovarian cancer. Much less fun after that. For most of my life with her, the stimulation level was high, and that's always been a turn-on for me. I didn't crawl or walk. One day, I just got up and ran. My very first word, yelled, not spoken, from my car seat as we cruised down the highway was, "Faster!" And once I got a hold of numbers, forget about it. There's a home video of me, probably about 2 years old, sitting on one of those jumpy seats in the kitchen. I'm in front of the refrigerator with colored magnetic numbers doing equations. Footnote, I swear to God, this is true, 2 years old. My mother's talking to one of her girlfriends while she's taping me, saying, when most babies want formula, they're not talking about math. But it wasn't just numbers. It was learning in general that excited me. I'd go through phases where I devoured any information about the Civil War, Tibetan Buddhism, alpine mountaineering, and planting a perennial garden. Footnote, I don't know if you know this, but you can lose a lot of friends talking nonstop about peat moss. The usual kid activities like baseball and soccer just didn't interest me. I remember having huge fights with my mother while she held open the screen door and forced me to play outside with the neighborhood kids. If you don't go out and play with Carl and Brian right now, there'll be no science homework after dinner. Don't even think about taking my biology away. Josh, you get out there and you get some fresh air, or so help me God, I am bringing those math books back to the library. She'd boot me out the door, kicking and screaming. As the years went by, I still preferred to work on my laptop in my hammock swing than be at the high school Super Bowl. Beth used to call me the Wizard, like I was some overgrown Harry Potter. She thought I just twirled around, wasting time, visiting various dictionary sites to look up words like napiform. It means turnip-shaped, but you know that. If you don't know what a turnip is, that's a turnip. It's a big round vegetable. It was the dog. So by the way, if you are get grumpy at your parents and you want to sass them, you can go to Mama and you can say, "Ooh, you're looking mighty napiform today." And she'll be like, "Oh, thank you," and then you can just walk away giggling, not realizing you said she looks like a beach ball. But you know, you can say she's looking very napiform. Your head is very napiform today.
Your forehead's very napiform.
I know, it's like 8 heads.
Every day it is actually.
I know, I keep adding more to it. You are not the average 17-year-old, she told me once. But then again, you weren't the average 15 or 12-year-old either. I had to agree with her there. It's very simple, really. I've only wanted one thing my whole life, to contribute, to help make the world a better place. It sounds amazingly corny, but pushing civilization forward has always been my highest priority. Not with more technology, not with more money, but with more ideas, more meaning. When we studied Darwin last year, his ideas burned off the page. All of us evolving, moving forward, consciously or not, it's probably what was in the back of my mind when I moved those plastic numbers across the refrigerator. It's what's on my mind as I type this now. If Larry was a way to delve into life's deeper meaning, count me in. By the way, those of you who are part of Honor Society was legit spawned from part of Larry. When I first started teaching and I was with like Mr. Sturgeon and Mr. Fossil, the big bald head that's over there, we were all fans of Larry and what was going on with it and the idea of changing the world through doing things. And so it was like a direct connection from our Honor Society here going back to what happened with this. So one of those connections. Beth made a list of all the kids in our homeroom and who they'd been in a past life. We passed the list back and forth, filling in the blanks. Jack Furtado, Victorian cellist. Laura Newman, Russian cosmonaut. Until the bell rang. Out in the hall, my enthusiasm pinned Beth to her locker. You're right! Everything Larry wrote about on his website had something to do with my life. Didn't I tell you? She couldn't have been happier. When I thought about what a consumer glutton my stepfather's girlfriend was, Larry wrote about shopaholics. When I missed my mother, he talked about attachment. It was uncanny. I didn't want to lay it on too thick. Beth's lips shone like hot mocha coffee. He puts into words exactly what we're thinking. She corrected herself immediately. He or she? But what's with the photos? Are we supposed to guess Larry's identity? Larry has less than 80 possessions. He posts them on his website, a few at a time, daring people to guess who he is. Right now, everyone's clueless. I mean, what can you tell from a pen and a hairbrush? Maybe you'll be lucky, and the next clue will be his or her license. Beth smiled. I'm sure Larry's saving that one for last. I asked her if she wanted to come over later and talk about my ideas for the club. She frowned. I can't. I have to study for that calculus test. Beth was a lot of things. Gorgeous, smart, determined. She's also a terrible liar. I stared her down. Okay, I promised I'd help my father with inventory. I kept staring. Darn it, Josh! I told Todd I'd help clean his basement tonight, okay? Could you please explain how someone as committed to personal growth as you are can vacuum the basement of the class cretin just because she thinks she's in love with him? I don't want to hear it, Beth barked back. There's no one more inconsistent than you. You're a computer geek who hikes in the woods for days. You hate to buy things, yet you always go to Bloomingdale's. That's different, but forget it. You made your point. If you guys don't know what Bloomingdale's is, we used to have these things called malls where people could go and hang out. And Bloomingdale's was one of the big stores they would have at the malls.
What did it happen?
What's that? Mostly just clothes. I'm trying to think what we have nowadays. It would be close. Do you guys ever go to the big Castle du Mall? They have the big stores at Castle du Mall?
It's like more strong.
Yeah, Macy's, JCPenney, stuff like that. It was just another version of Macy's and JCPenney.
Sephora.
So, probably not like Sephora. Although they do have a makeup counter we're going to talk about in a moment. She was just gearing up. Look, you're my best friend. We've been bailing each other out since grade school. But not everyone wants to go through life being a hermit, living in the world of ideas. She made quotation marks with her fingers when she said the word ideas. It was one of the only things Beth did that drove me out of my mind. She finally got around to sputtering out the truth about Todd. He's the only cool guy who's ever liked me. I know he can act like a jerk, but do you mind if I let his popularity just rub off on me for a while? For some reason, the bare-bones honesty of her plea only fueled my growing sense of annoyance.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I made those fake quotation marks around the word out, then walked toward lit class. I could feel her behind me even before she spun me around to face her. "I hate fighting with you! Hate it, hate it, hate it!" We stood silently for a few minutes. I know, I channeled inner teenage girl pretty well on that one.
Yeah,
We
a little
stood-
too well.
We stood silently for a few minutes. "It's just that Todd has to have the basement cleaned by the weekend or he can't play. I'm trying to have some school spirit for once. Plus, he knows I'm really good at organizing things." I wanted to tell her that those skills might be put to better use than placing football and basketball trophies in chronological order, but I held my tongue. Instead, I told her I had lots to do, tons to do. I was way too busy to deal with this paltry exchange. And I shuffled away as nonchalantly as someone in deep despair could shuffle. My anxiety around Beth could be traced to one thing. I was never included in the endlessly rotating list of guys she had crushes on. Sam, Daniel, Andy, Speedy McDermott, Jack, now Todd. But never, ever me. If the choice were a 2-week exciting vacation in Europe with me, or helping Todd clean his basement, yeah, I knew sadly what Beth's choice would be. Next stop in my fun-filled day, guidance with Miss Phillips. I tried to rally myself for the occasion by doing some standing push-ups against my locker. I hadn't even sat down when Miss Phillips got to the point. "Have you thought about your major, Josh?" Miss Phillips had the terrible habit of pushing her glasses up her nose with her middle finger. She did it so often that everyone in school called her Flip-Off Phillips. I played with the zipper of my book bag, then realized I was not giving her my full attention. Larry's sermon number 22. I looked her in the eyes. "I was thinking about philosophy. You know, the meaning of life, that sort of thing. From the point of view of someone who likes to read, likes to think like you do, it's a good choice. But you realize the job prospects are pretty slim. I'm thinking after the Depression, after, the apocalypse, there'll be lots of positions for people with depth and vision." She crinkled up her nose. Her glasses fell. She flipped me the bird again. "Josh, I'm not sure it makes sense to plan a career based on an apocalypse. What if there isn't one?" "Then I guess I'm screwed." I flashed her a big smile so she couldn't yell at me for the language. "I suppose I'm being too materialistic. Studying philosophy at Princeton is a fine and worthy choice." I wasn't sure Miss Phillips's revelation came less from my sales pitch than it did from the fact that it was 10 to 11 and she was dying for a cigarette before her next appointment. I decided to let her off the nicotine hook. I gathered up my things and headed for the door. By the way, back when I was in high school, shortly before this, we used to have a smoking room that the teachers could go to during the day, because teachers who would smoke couldn't go the whole day without their cigarettes. And so there was like a room you could walk by, and every time they opened the door, like cigarette smoke would just waft out. It was awful. I've had a soft spot in my heart for Miss Phillips since last year when I spotted her email address in her office and started up a chatty internet conversation with her as a 40-year-old bachelor from Portland. I don't care what anyone says, I was not going through her desk. After months of quiet online flirtation, I invited her to meet me at the Borders coffee shop, only to watch her from the cookbook section. She waited more than 2 hours and 3 cappuccinos before she went home. That I felt bad about. Miss Phillips was usually tough as nails. I never thought she'd fall that hard. By the way, there's a term for that now. When you pretend to be someone else and try
Catfish.
to... Nicely done.
I got cat.
This was before catfishing was even really a thing, and so he was one of the first catfishers back in the day, too. I decided to skip the rest of the day. The reoccurring vision of Beth dressed up like Snow White, singing as she swept Todd Terrific's basement, was more than I could endure. I grabbed my camera from my locker and opted to check in with my mother instead. When my stepfather visited Mom, he headed for the cemetery. I, who knew her much better than he did, headed for somewhere that captured her spirit more than a pasture full of granite headstones.
Yes.
The makeup counter at
Yes,
Bloomingdale's,
please.
which apparently was what excited Reed a second ago. So this is the makeup counter, so not quite like Sephora. but it's the same idea. They have a lower makeup counter. So we're going to get to, his mom went to the makeup counter a lot, and so that's where he goes to connect with his mom. Instead of sitting at a grave, he goes to talk to her sitting in front of makeup.
Put your feet down. Bomba clap.
The makeup counter at Bloomingdale's. I slogged through the slush, then grabbed a bus to Chestnut Hill. Ever since we lived in the Boston area, my mother had dragged me here once a month. The waft of perfumes hit me like a surge of memories. I plopped down in the tall seat at the Chanel counter. I think it's safe to say I was the only person in that department sitting in the lotus position. Do you guys know what the lotus position is?
Yeah.
Like this.
Not bad.
Down
Close
for
to it.
y'all. One full like.
Yeah, it's the thing that if I did.
You can't see my feet because I was doing the arms.
Totally.
He had the legs, I had the arms. What did I say?
Look at that.
What did I say?
I cannot do that
What
myself.
did me and Matthias say?
Totally.
Rockin' day.
Hello, Joshy. How's it going? Marlene, the beauty doctor, has been working here for more than 20 years. With her shiny helmet of dyed black hair and dark eyebrows penciled in for the one she lost years ago, she was Mom's favorite salesperson. It's slow, so you can sit. If I get a client, you know the drill. I saluted, then leaned back to hang with Mom. My mother bailed on her wealthy parents' expectations as soon as she hit college. Instead of following in their Wall Street footsteps, she hitchhiked cross country, worked tirelessly for civil rights, and made some bad choices in men. One thing from her Grosse Pointe background she couldn't walk away from, however, was her fondness for upscale moisturizers and creams. She used to spend hours trying to look like she wore no makeup at all. She experimented with pencils and powders like a mad scientist, but always looked the same to me. I can remember perching on this stool as a preschooler, watching Marlene hand Mom tube after tube of lipstick. Mom would ask me which color I preferred, consider my answer, and then buy whichever one she wanted anyway. I waited till Marlene rang someone up at the other end of the counter before I started talking. Okay, Mom. In a nutshell, Beth is cleaning Todd's basement. Peter is dragging me to another lasagna dinner at Catherine's, and I'm nowhere closer to changing the world. A woman with a leopard print hat eyed me as she walked by. I just feel like I'm waiting for my life to begin, that I've wasted 17 years. Then what? 4 years at Princeton? How does that help move civilization forward? Would you like to see our deep pore cleaning mask? Marlene inquired. I nodded.
Yeah.
Whenever Marlene's boss circled by, I pretended I was a paying customer. If you ask me, you make it too hard on yourself. Stop worrying about civilization. Worry about staying out of trouble and making nice friends. She rubbed the mask onto my face in small circles. I have nice friends. Well, I have one nice friend. One nice friend is all you need. Marlene watched her boss get on the escalator, then wiped off my mask with a tissue. Here, she gathered up tiny bottles of free samples, put them in a small bag with handles, and gave it to me. You can come back anytime. I could see Marlene eyeing a potential customer hovering over the nail polish. I saluted again and left. In the shoe department, I tried on 4 pairs of sneakers, 3 pairs of loafers, and 5 pairs of boots before the salesperson deserted me. I circled by the makeup counter on my way out. Mom? A 50-ish woman in fishnets turned around, then went back to what she was doing. Mom, you'll help me, right? With the whole change the world thing? Then I did what I always did when I needed an answer from my mother. I listened for the very next word someone said. A businessman talking on his cell phone provided her response. Yeah, he said into his phone. Of course I will. My grin appeared ear to ear. When I said, thanks, Mom, the woman in fishnets turned around again. I tipped my woolen hat her way and headed out of the store.
And that is where we'll stop today.
And that's the thing that he's going to do a lot, is how he connects to his mom. He goes to Bloomingdale's and then just stands in a crowd and asks a question out loud and then waits for the first person he hears talking and imagines that's his mom replying to him. So that's his way of talking to his mom, is going into a crowd, asking a question, and then listening for the first answer.
Next word is shut up, bro. You gotta work on it.